Good evening, and thank you for joining us for CBS News Detroit at 7. We are streaming live on the CBS News app and on Pluto TV. I'm Shayna Humphreys, and tonight we continue our conversation on artificial intelligence. We'll be joined by some college professors to discuss the ethics of ChatGPT in the classroom. We'll also sit down with a group of entrepreneurs who are using artificial intelligence to help small businesses succeed in the digital world. If you are not familiar with this game-changing technology yet, we'll get you caught up right now. ChatGPT is an artificial intelligence program that instantly provides all kinds of information, and it can perform all kinds of tasks. You can pretty much ask it anything. It can write you a song, an essay on any topic. It can translate any text into a different language of your choice. It can even give you a recipe using the specific ingredients you already have available. The possibilities are pretty much endless. ChatGPT was only released a few months ago, and already it is taking entire industries by storm. Just on Tuesday, an even newer version was released called GPT-4. It's said to be more accurate, a more accurate version of the software, but it does still have some limitations, which we will get into tonight. First, though, the good stuff. GPT-4 has a new ability to quote-unquote see and respond to images as well as text. According to OpenAI, which is the company behind ChatGPT, the new version is capable of passing the bar exam in the 90th percentile. It can also score a 1300 on the SAT and a 5, which is the highest score possible on 6 advanced placement high school exams. On the other hand, there are some limitations. The company admits ChatGPT occasionally generates incorrect information. It may sometimes produce harmful instructions or biased content, and they say it generally lacks knowledge of events that occurred after September of 2021, when the data it scans cuts off. To give you an idea of the wide variety of tasks this AI can perform and some of those limitations, we want you to take a look at this. A rabbi in New York decided to put it to the test by delivering a sermon to his synagogue that was written entirely by ChatGPT. He was impressed, but he says as powerful as it is, it couldn't really emulate real human experiences.
Spirituality often, and the spiritual experiences that we have in life, are often what we'd call ineffable, unexplainable by words. And so no matter how good ChatGPT can possibly be at describing and using language and describing experiences, it can't really understand spirituality. That's a major limitation of it.
After the break, we'll be joined by 2 professors, one in the English department and one in electrical and computer engineering, to talk about ChatGPT's impact in their classrooms.
CBS News Detroit, on your block, around the clock in Macomb County. Hi, we're CBS News Detroit. But we don't just cover the news here. We're also here, and everywhere in between. You know, the places you live, work, and play in Southeast Michigan. We're talking less of this and more of the stories that actually matter to you.
CBS News Detroit, on your block, around the clock.
That's right. Local news just found a home in your neighborhood. We're CBS News Detroit. Live, streaming, and on demand. Nice to meet you. CBS News Detroit. On your block, around the clock in Wayne County. CBS News Detroit, on your block, around the clock in Monroe County.
CBS News Detroit, the stories you care about.
Live, streaming, and on demand. We're on your block, around the clock.
Southeast Michigan news whenever you want it.
We live here. We work here.
From North Branch to Southgate.
East Point to Westland.
Wherever you live, we're here for you.
Making a difference in your neighborhood.
CBS News Detroit. Live, streaming, and on demand. Building a better newscast, one story at a time.
CBS News Detroit. On your block, around the clock in Oakland County. It's here. The news, CBS News Detroit.
Covering every corner of our community.
With experienced journalists, uncovering the stories that truly matter to you.
Making a difference in your neighborhood.
And weather experts, always looking ahead to prepare you for what's next. Live, streaming, and on demand. With more hours of local news coming soon.
Southeast Michigan news whenever you want it. Right here on CBS News Detroit.
Weekdays at 5, 6, and 11. And streaming live.
Welcome back. Teachers across the country are addressing a growing concern that students could use artificial intelligence to cheat. Some school districts, like the one you're about to see in Seattle, are cracking down on students using ChatGPT. Here's KIRO's Lauren Donovan with more.
I think it's definitely a conversation in every school right now.
I've been hearing definitely some rumblings and questions from teachers. What do I do if I think that I have students who have been using it?
ChatGPT is free and available online right now. The critical thinking bot says type any question in this box, coding equation, chemistry problem, and I'll answer.
You can ask it to write a short story or an essay or whatever the writing prompt is in a fourth grade voice, let's say.
It might be pretty generic, might be pretty basic, but it's well written.
I could ask ChatGPT to write me a 5-paragraph essay on Pride and Prejudice, and it would do it. But would it get me an A? I sat down with Eastside Catholic's Director of Curriculum, Molly Page, to see.
So we take the prompt and we add the instruction to write an essay, and we can also say with cited quotations, and it will generate an essay.
There it goes. Within 30 seconds, there it was.
These themes are personified by the characters of Mr. Darcy and Elizabeth Bennet.
According to Molly, this one wouldn't pass muster. While ChatGPT can choose quotes, it won't always select the right one. And AI just can't replicate the voice of a student. Teachers know.
The chatbot can't look at images or graphs, so it can't engage in any data analysis that's visual.
So is this chatbot the death of the English department?
No, it's not. What I think it's actually really going to do is force a vital conversation around kind of like a stagnation in English.
Caleb Sonnelins in the English department are adjusting curriculum to keep up with it. They're crafting more complex prompts. Because sure, the bot can answer questions, but it can't show mastery on a topic.
I think with anything new, anywhere, especially with technology, people are going to have fear.
It is kind of scary in the sense that we have to adapt to it, but at the same time too, it's like it's going to be for the best that we do adapt.
Reporting in Sammamish, Lauren Donovan, Cairo 7 News.
And joining us now is an English professor at Wayne State University, Christopher Susak, as well as an assistant professor in the Department of Electrical and Computer Engineering at Wayne State, Xin-Yu Zhou. Thank you both for joining us. So this technology is upending all kinds of industries. One of the first conversations, though, that's really been making the rounds is about education. Christopher, I'll start with you as an English professor. That's kind of one of the first areas people started ringing those alarms.
Yeah.
It can write essays for you, but you're not necessarily as concerned or as terrified of it as some seem to be.
I'm really not, actually. It ends up speeding things along for us in a way that's helpful because it allows us to actually focus student attention on the more important parts of the learning process, like critical thinking, creative thinking, revision, audience analysis. So, you know, they can ask questions and learn to ask good questions along the way, get some of these mundane tasks like first drafts or basic descriptions of things handled very quickly, which would normally take them a long time. And then we can focus more of that energy on more productive, more useful, more human tasks that are necessary.
So in a way, it could make students or everybody better writers, right?
Yeah, it very well could, actually. And one of my colleagues, Dr. Jared Grogan, actually makes this point very well, I think. He asserts that it actually kind of brings forth what's most human about us because it gets us thinking about how the writing and the writing situation itself are about two people communicating and trying to persuade each other or to convince each other of one thing or another. And if we can focus more effort on that rather than, again, basic descriptions or summaries or first drafts, then all the better.
Sure. And Shin Yu, on the other hand, you teach people how to code. So that's pretty difficult when we have this artificial intelligence that can code better than humans.
Yeah. So in fact, to be honest, I'm teaching a foundation course of coding at Wednesday. To be honest, all my previous exams, assignments can be easily solved by ChatGPT within 1 minute or maybe 30 seconds. So all my problems can be solved. So, but against this backup, I will still support for the ChatGPT based on the following 2 major reasons. I think the first one is that I think whenever students get into a new area, the most difficult thing is to get started, how to get started. I think ChatGPT could be extremely useful for giving you some kind of half-done draft with a decent quality. Then you can build upon that and to easily finish your task. I think another aspect is that people may fear about touching upon new things. When you get into a brand new area, how can you get started? And ChatGPT can give you some kind of brief introduction, big picture. You can expect what you want to expect to learn, some kind of stuff. And another question, I think Chris also mentioned that it could be treated as a tool to train the students to ask the right questions, the good questions. Because in many situations, I think a right question is much more valuable than maybe 100 solutions. So that's my basic opinion about the ChatGPT.
Yeah. In the story that we just saw, Christopher, I saw you nodding when the teacher they interviewed said, you can tell, if a student you've been working with for some time writes a certain way and all of a sudden there seems to be a different tone, you would be able to catch that, right?
Oh, pretty easily, actually. I mean, you have to remember most writing teachers of any kind have been staring at the written word for longer than 10,000 hours in their lifetime. So probably even double that. And you can very easily tell subtle differences in voice. And ChatGPT just isn't quite able to be very personal, but it also isn't very good yet at recognizing truth from lie or even really citing correct information necessarily. You always have to check because it might be pulling something that's completely bogus anyway.
Yeah. Shin Yu, has this changed the outlook for your students? For so many years, the idea of learning how to code and becoming good at it was a great career path. It was a great plan for your future, but now we have these tools just upending everything.
Yeah, I agree. So, because some news says that maybe the programmer will replace totally by the ChatGPT because you do not have to code by yourselves. But on the other hand, we should be careful that if you do not have any background on coding, you cannot even judge whether the code is correct or not. So you still have to learn some kind of basic stuff to judge, to utilize, to use it. So I don't be that pessimistic. I'm still optimistic that we should utilize the tool to better serve us rather than be afraid of this kind of tool.
Yeah. And overall, I find it fascinating. There's sort of 2 camps of people right now. There are those who are afraid it's going to take over the world, and just ruin everything, and those who are ready to adapt and use it. And both of you seem to be pretty in favor of this technology. Is that a fair statement, Christopher?
Yes, I would say so, especially because if we want to prevent the former, we have to do the latter. So if we want to prevent, say, the next AI revolution or what have you, we need to understand how it works. And I think students in particular are well primed to be in a good position for that because most people don't realize that they already interact with and give data to AIs hundreds of times a day, if not constantly. So,
smartphones, vehicles, it's already pretty present.
Yep, and the data's all for sale and someone's using it to make decisions for you usually.
Yeah, concerning to say the least.
A little bit.
Yeah, and Shin Yu, you are researching AI. You're very interested in this.
That is what my research is on. So my research is basically protecting the data privacy used for this kind of large language model, such as ChatGPT for the training. So because people provide their personal data for this kind of training, how can we guarantee that your data is not leakage? Some adversary cannot infer your personal information, like money, how much money you make, what is your ages, such kind of stuff.
Sure.
Yeah, that's my research.
A lot of concerns there, and we're going to be hearing that certainly a lot more in the months and years to come. We're going to talk more about some of the other concerns and why other people do believe this technology is a threat. We'll have more with Chris and Shin Yu after the break.
CBS CBS News Detroit, on your block, around the clock in Macomb County. Hi, we're CBS News Detroit. But we don't just cover the news here. We're also here, and everywhere in between. You know, the places you live, work, and play in Southeast Michigan. We're talking less of this, and more of the stories that actually matter to you.
CBS News Detroit, on your block, around the clock.
That's right, local news just found a home in your neighborhood. We're CBS News Detroit, live, streaming, and on demand. Nice to meet you. CBS News Detroit, on your block, around the clock in Wayne County. CBS News Detroit, on your block, around the clock in Monroe County.
CBS News Detroit, the stories you care about.
Live, streaming, and on demand. We're on your block, around the clock.
Southeast Michigan news whenever you want it.
We live here. We work here.
From North Branch to Southgate.
East Point to Westland.
Wherever you live, we're here for you.
Making a difference in your neighborhood.
CBS News Detroit, live, streaming, and on demand. Building a better newscast, one story at a time.
CBS News Detroit, on your block, around the clock in Oakland County. It's here, the new CBS News Detroit.
Covering every corner of our community.
With experienced journalists, uncovering the stories that truly matter to you.
Making a difference in your neighborhood.
And weather experts, always looking ahead to prepare you for what's next. Live, streaming, and on demand, with more hours of local news coming soon.
Southeast Michigan news whenever you want it, right here on CBS News Detroit.
Weekdays at 5, 6, and 11, and streaming live.
If we as educators think that ChatGPT is a threat, then we need to question what educating means. It is about providing the appropriate high-level skills that students will then become ongoing learners. These technologies are enabling technologies. We have seen how there's been this evolution from spelling checks on Word, and then grammar checks on Word, and then summarizers. They're all part of the writing armory. What we're now seeing is some generative writing capability. What we need to do is to equip the students with the recognition that that's just a starting position. We can now use what's been produced, enhance it, and critically evaluate it, and identify its weaknesses, and then produce a piece of work.
Welcome back. Joining us again is Christopher Susak, an English professor at Wayne State University, as well as Xin-Yu Zhou, an assistant professor also at Wayne State in the Department of Electrical and Computer Engineering. We just heard from that professor from across the pond, and he's echoing what you two have been discussing already, that this is a tool that can be used. I found it interesting that he pointed to spell check, basically. No one's really worried about nobody being able to spell or write anymore, and we've become pretty used to using that tool. And you guys say this is just another tool in that tool belt, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. Great.
Well, I mean, again, I like how he said it's an enabling technology, right?
Yeah.
It really is. It's a democratizing technology if, again, people learn how to use it, which is why it's so crucial that people are aware of these things. Because students aren't always necessarily prepared the same way, or they don't have the same sort of comfort level or anxieties around these types of skills. Writing or giving speeches or what have you, these kinds of things make people very nervous for a lot of different reasons. And if we can sort of cut some of that nervousness out, or focus and harness that energy, again, like we were saying, on revision, on audience awareness, and some of these things, contextual awareness, all the better, all the better.
And Shin-Yu, there's also concerns about it. In all of your research, where are you concerned that if people don't really understand what this is and how it works, they might be led astray?
Yeah, I think maybe people have the concern that I don't trust the answer provided by the ChatGPT, maybe. So maybe people may be afraid that, I think the biggest concern is that some people may fear that their job will be totally replaced by the ChatGPT. I think that's the biggest concern. But on the other hand, we should think about it like this way. In my mind, I always treated this tool like, make an analogy like the internet. When internet introduced, maybe people have some kind of bad feelings about it. But as time goes on, we can see internet is everywhere. So in my view, that the ChatGPT should be the next internet.
Sure.
Yeah.
Automation, we've seen that. Is automation replacing people? And it's a similar story. It's become a tool so that people can do some other things.
Yeah.
But Chris, there are some concerns, and you have mentioned a number of times, it's when people don't understand really what this technology is and what it's doing that we can run into some problems.
Yeah, I mean, it ranges everything from the make a mistake on, changing your oil all the way to the conspiratorial, if you want to go that far. But really the thing that I guess is probably most dangerous, or the thing that people don't necessarily recognize, is that these things can't recognize a truth from a lie. And if we aren't able to understand, again, what that really means all the way down, then we start to lend way too much credence, too much authority to the answers that we get without, again, focusing on that aspect of verifying sources or making sure that the information that we're getting actually applies to the situation that we're working with. I mean, on the bigger end, like I mentioned earlier, people need to know that every time that they interact with their phone, they're interacting with an AI that's giving data to somebody that is buying it and using it. Whether that's to market to you very specifically, we were getting, my wife and I, we were getting notices about starting, wish lists for her being pregnant before she was ever pregnant. Okay, these things aren't that uncommon anymore. That is an AI at work. Because it can take so much demographic information and can make relatively accurate predictions and can guide you to buy things, to see media, to not see certain media, to participate in certain conversations or not to participate in certain conversations, or even for people to know what districts are going to vote which way at any given time.
So you kind of have to take it with a grain of salt. It sounds like you can't just outsource every thought process. You almost have to think critically more.
You have to.
In a certain way.
Yes.
Shin-Yu, you teach people how to code, and this is completely changing your entire industry.
Yes.
What issues have you run into? And you did mention earlier that you can't just come in with no coding knowledge and boom, there you go. You have to be able to recognize when the machine has messed up.
Yes. So basically, because for the coding, if you do not have any background, you just see some kind of symbols, right? You do not even understand what's going on for the code. So you really have to know the basic stuff. And until that moment, you can get started to appreciate this code, right? You can appreciate this kind of output of this powerful AI tool. But on the other hand, as I mentioned, because of this ChatGPT is so powerful, I have to shift away of my teaching style. So previously, I just ask the students to maybe memorize something, but now, instead of asking students memorize the thing, I should ask them to, for example, record a video while you are coding and explain to the video. And that kind of thing to express all your thinking process. And I think until that moment, the students get started to the process of real learning, because previously maybe they're just memorizing, but now they get started to learning the real stuff. I think that's another usefulness of this AI tool.
And that has to be a positive for education, actually learning instead of just memorizing.
Problem solving.
Yeah.
That's really what it's about. I
Absolutely.
think that's exactly what he's talking about. I'm so glad to hear him talk about that.
Yeah.
It's that emphasis on problem solving that's so important.
All right. Well, thank you both so much for joining us. After the break, we're going to be joined by a group of entrepreneurs who are using artificial intelligence to help small businesses succeed in the digital world.
CBS News Detroit, on your block, around the clock in Macomb County. Hi, we're CBS News Detroit. But we don't just cover the news here. We're also here, and everywhere in between. You know, the places you live, work, and play in Southeast Michigan. We're talking less of this, and more of the stories that actually matter to you.
CBS News Detroit, on your block, around the clock.
That's right, local news just found a home in your neighborhood. We're CBS News Detroit, live, streaming, and on demand. Nice to meet you. CBS News Detroit, on your block, around the clock in Wayne County. CBS News Detroit, on your block, around the clock in Monroe County.
CBS News Detroit, the stories you care about.
Live, streaming, and on demand. We're on your block, around the clock.
Southeast Michigan news whenever you want it.
We live here. We work here.
From North Branch to Southgate.
East Point to Westland.
Wherever you live, we're here for you.
Making a difference in your neighborhood.
CBS News Detroit, live, streaming, and on demand. Building a better newscast, one story at a time.
CBS News Detroit, on your block, around the clock in Oakland County. It's here, the news CBS News Detroit.
Covering every corner of our community.
With experienced journalists, uncovering the stories that truly matter to you.
Making a difference in your neighborhood.
And weather experts, always looking ahead to prepare you for what's next. Live, streaming, and on demand, with more hours of local news coming soon.
Southeast Michigan news whenever you want it, right here on CBS News Detroit.
Weekdays at 5, 6, and 11, and streaming live.
Welcome back. So we just talked about using ChatGPT in the classroom, but that is only one of the environments being upended by the technology. Now we'll take you to Hollywood, where the Associated Press talked with several actors and directors to get their take on the use of AI like ChatGPT.
I'm all for doing no work. You know, if there's a machine that could do my work for me and I get paid the same, do it. And then I'll go get a massage.
Do you think that it takes the human element out of it?
It probably does for comedy. It's hard for computers to write comedy. I've tried, I've asked it, and it did not solve any of my problems.
Are you lying?
No, I did. I said, write this monologue, and it was terrible.
I mean, I think it would be a fun experiment, because in a way, that the process of development of a script, especially with studio movies, where there's a lot of different, ideas of what you're supposed to do, is kind of like what that is. But it's kind of fascinating. Somebody should do it for sure, and shoot it on an iPhone, and the whole thing will just be totally 2023. Yeah.
If it's a compelling story, if it's one of those scripts I can't put down, absolutely. It's a really interesting tool. I think it is a tool. I don't think it ever replaces a human being. But it's going to be fun to play around with it and see what people come up with.
I'm kind of old school analog and always will be, and really believe in the magic that happens between energy and flesh and bone. But I also understand that, things I guess are moving in that way. So if it were for good, I think I could get behind it. But if it were just to flex a technological muscle, I think I would have a harder time.
I don't know, man. I just feel like there's a human element to what we do, and I would be so stunned if that ever gets superseded or replaced. I feel like people know other people in their hearts. I say that, but we've also underestimated everything a computer can do over and over and over again. So, I don't know. I just hope that I keep getting to do this and tell stories on some level, you know, before the robots take over.
Before the robots take over. Joining us now is the CEO of Rebrand Cities and founder of Prompt Camp, Hodge Flemings, as well as Rebrand Cities Chief Operating Officer Cynthia Respert and their creative technologist Dave Linebury. Thank you all for joining us. I saw a lot of heads nodding as we watched some of those sound bites from Hollywood there. You all work together and you are excited about this technology. You don't subscribe to the whole the robots are taking over everything, right, Hodge?
No, we don't. So just imagine life prior to the printing press, right? And so every time that there is a technological advance, that means that it opened up the door for something else. And so I don't look at encyclopedias anymore, but I use the internet. And so I think people have to be open to the fact that it creates an opportunity versus looking at the negative side of it.
Sure. And Cynthia, how do you interact with this technology? How has it made its way into your world?
Wow, I have always been an efficiency finder. So as operations, I always look to see how I can improve a process. How can we do this faster? How can we scale this? How can we do this and accelerate the efficiencies that we gain? So this just supercharges everything in regards to operations and systems and processes to achieve more, doing less, and impacting more people.
Yeah, and how about you, Dave? Where does it intersect into your world?
I'm an artist. For me, it's not going to replace my art. I like some of the art that's put out by it, although if you've ever looked at the art really close, there's always like 15 fingers and stuff. But I do like the idea that you can do idea generation really fast, and just getting like some comps out really quick of some ideas in seconds as opposed to hours is huge, especially when clients that really need something fast. I can turn around so quick now.
Yeah, there's been a big conversation about art. I think AI won an art competition somewhere and people really freaked out. Yeah, and there is a conversation to be had about if something is entirely created by AI, is it art? But as you said, like with all of these scenarios, it is just a tool that can lead to a different kind of art.
It's a tool, but the reality is that you have to be good at art to be able to produce good art, and you also have to be really good at learning how to prompt in order to get good art. You're not going to get it just by writing in, make me a frog with wings.
Right.
You'll get a frog with wings that the machine thinks is cool, and it'll look good, but nothing like what someone who's actually learned this stuff can produce.
And learning how to prompt is kind of the skill of tomorrow. It's kind of the new thing that everyone needs to learn.
Prompt engineer is a new job title.
Prompt engineer. You have Prompt Camp. Tell us about that, Hodge. What is it?
So Prompt Camp is an initiative that we started because we wanted to make AI and prompting accessible to all people. So we launched it, and we're now on our 4th edition. We have one coming up April 12th and 13th. And what we do is that we walk people through the process of being able to leverage these tools so they can create art, they can become more productive, and be able to streamline their actual business. So we're working with schools, we're working with agencies to be able to look at this. We're basically trying to create superhumans. And we want to start right in our own city of Detroit. And so we're super excited about what this looks like because major companies and corporations already have access to these tools. But the common everyday person, we want to break the fear of them using these tools.
And it can really help that common everyday person. Cynthia, when it comes to prompting, what have you learned, or what are some tidbits that you can give us lay people about the very act of prompting AI?
Sure. Specifically with ChatGPT, it will make you ask better questions. You know how you can have an interview or you can have a discussion. It will prompt you, right? Because it'll give you a general answer. So you'll have to dial in and say, well, this is what I really mean. So you have this interaction with the machine, with the technology, that you have to craft and shape what you're asking it. And then it'll retain what you taught it already, and then you can continue to progress that conversation. So I think to answer your question, it allows you to think more deeply, to craft your question so you can get the output that you're looking for from the technology.
It makes the concept of a rough draft or even brainstorming
Yes.
sessions a lot different. It's not as mentally taxing when you can just keep telling ChatGPT, make it better.
I love
make it better.
Yeah, this is like, it uses the composition of data from, I like to say, digital generations before us.
Yeah.
Only up to 2021, right? So it stops at September 2021. But everything before that, it synthesizes it for you and puts it into this compact, succinct answer that you can then develop to get what you need.
David, you were about to speak up.
I was just to say, one thing with prompting is you realize the limitations of English and how what an active crime scene English is, that it cannot be worked on easily, and you start to realize that when the prompts come back to you, it goes, I didn't understand that, and you realize that question would be straightforward to any of us, to an American, but maybe to a machine, it's completely confusing. Things that we take for granted.
Yeah.
Most of it gets, but it still gets hung up on some things, and you really realize, oh, I guess our grammar is a little funky sometimes, and we got to change it.
Right, and those are one of the limitations. It can't pick up on, you know, maybe it understands slang, but can't pick up on some of the things that humans can pick up on, and you kind of deduce meaning out of the whole complete picture, but the AI is missing some of those factors, right?
Go ahead.
Okay. You know, so I try to look at it as this is a new opportunity to think about co-creation. And what does co-creation look like when you have a human and a machine working in concert? And so if we look at some case studies, let's say for instance, because we already had a conversation like about education. What about the homeschool teacher who is having trouble putting together lesson plans, putting together quizzes and assignments? That same homeschool teacher can use ChatGPT to check the answers of their own child, right? So a very practical way, even though some people in education might push back on it, but it's a very practical way that somebody could use that and they could save time and create a better outcome for their child.
Yeah. Well, speaking of practical uses, we're going to get to some of those. We have been putting ChatGPT to the test, and after the break, we'll show you some of the questions we have asked and the answers we received.
CBS News Detroit, on your block, around the clock in Macomb County. Hi, we're CBS News Detroit. But we don't just cover the news here. We're also here, and everywhere in between. You know, the places you live, work, and play in Southeast Michigan. We're talking less of this, and more of the stories that actually matter to you.
CBS News Detroit, on your block, around the clock.
That's right, local news just found a home in your neighborhood. We're CBS News Detroit, live, streaming, and on demand. Nice to meet you. CBS News Detroit, on your block, around the clock in Wayne County. CBS News Detroit, on your block, around the clock in Monroe County.
CBS News Detroit, the stories you care about.
Live, streaming, and on demand. We're on your block, around the clock.
Southeast Michigan news whenever you want it.
We live here. We work here.
From North Branch to Southgate.
East Point to Westland.
Wherever you live, we're here for you.
Making a difference in your neighborhood.
CBS News Detroit, live, streaming, and on demand. Building a better newscast, one story at a time.
CBS News Detroit, on your block, around the clock in Oakland County. It's here, the new CBS News Detroit.
Covering every corner of our community.
With experienced journalists, uncovering the stories that truly matter to you.
Making a difference in your neighborhood.
And weather experts, always looking ahead to prepare you for what's next. Live, streaming, and on demand, with more hours of local news coming soon.
Southeast Michigan news whenever you want it, right here on CBS News Detroit.
weekdays at 5, 6, and 11, and streaming live.
Welcome back. It's a question you probably ask yourself several times a week. What should I make for dinner? Well, now with ChatGPT, you can have a curated menu in no time. We asked it to create Monday through Friday with only 5 ingredients and under 30 minutes of prep time. Outline it day by day and include a shopping list at the end. Well, it told us to make grilled chicken with mixed vegetables, egg fried rice, pasta with tomato sauce, tuna salad wraps, and a veggie quesadilla. It also gave us the specific 14 items that we needed to put on our shopping list. You guys, this is just one of the everyday kind of tools and tasks, tedious tasks, that we can kind of outsource now, creating our own shopping list. What kind of things, I'm interested, have you guys used it? Dave, I'll start with you.
Oh man, we did. Well, we've been doing entire business plans with them, value propositions, which are kind of hard to write. I've had it debug some code for me, which is crazy when you think how many hours it takes sometimes to clean code up, and all of a sudden you can just get it.
And
in
it did a satisfactory job.
Oh, instantly, yeah.
Wow.
And it knows like I think it knows 12 languages of code and 95 human languages right now.
Wow.
Yeah, and 4 is even bigger.
Yeah. Cynthia, what have you used it for?
Wow, so I'm the experienced lady, right? So we're working with some students right now. And so what's so important is that we don't lean on the muscle memory that we have to go back to the old way of doing things. So I said, lay out this agenda for this workshop. Okay, now give it 30-minute segments. All right, now what's the activity for each of these? So it accelerates the programming and the things that I do for my business. I can do it in ChatGPT, and then it gives me a greater foundation to build upon.
Yeah. And we've had this conversation, I feel like so many times. It's not, we're already seeing it's not replacing people, it's not replacing entire jobs or industries, but it does have the potential, Hodge, to make people better, faster, better at their jobs, and to improve industries, right?
Yes, yes. So it's an extremely powerful tool, and I think if people look at it from an ideation standpoint, and if they look at like very specific use cases, and so say for instance, even in putting together like presentations, it can lay out and give you an actual structure, and then you can dive into what would go on that particular slide. And I found it to be very, very powerful in terms of just research. I was doing something on narrative economics versus just looking at storytelling. And then just the information that I was able to kind of extract from that, put together a much richer experience in terms of what I was trying to communicate. So I found it to be an extremely powerful tool. Extremely powerful.
Well, let's take another look. We asked why ChatGPT is beneficial for everyday life, and we asked why it might be harmful. And it told us it can be used as an educational tool to increase efficiency, mental health support, and enhanced creativity. But it says it might be harmful due to misinformation, privacy concerns, over-reliance, echo chambers, and polarization. Hodge, what's your first response when you hear some of those downsides?
So how many people have gone onto the internet and they've taken everything at face value on the internet? It's not true. If you talk to somebody, you're going to get misinformation, right? So I think we're really in a space to where how do we identify or separate real from artificial, misinformation from what is true? And so I think with any tool, what you have to say is, okay, all right, let's look at the information. You still need to dig into it, right, and make sure that it's accurate. Is there anything that would cause any kind of imminent danger or things like that? But I'm not going to stop using the internet because there's something on it that's not true.
Yeah.
And so I think you can't throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Sure. How about over-reliance? Dave, you were kind of nodding your head. You said it fixed some bugs in code for you, but you still need to have a working knowledge. Like, you already understand how to look for mistakes, and you are able to tell whether it did a good job or not.
Right.
So when you hear over-reliance, what concerns do you have about people just totally relying on this?
Oh, I think it is easy to get lazy and just see how fun this is and how like, oh, I just saved a couple hours. I guess I'm gonna, or just playing with it. People are telling it jokes, or write this in the write me a song, but make Jerry Seinfeld sing it or whatever. You can do all these weird things with it, but I think people are just going to think that they can. It's the same. It's like kind of the other side of the coin of believing that all this is going to take my job. It's not. It's just making you more effective. You have time to do more things, more thinking, more ideation, and use these as a supplement, not as a replacement. But I don't know about over-reliance. I think maybe what Tahad's point about truth, you know, this is kind of like the whole internet's like a giant Kurosawa film where just like 500 versions of the truth and none of them are really true and they all are true.
Yeah, that's a widespread problem, not even limited to technology. We've seen, you know, through media, through pop culture, through social media, it's difficult to wade through all of the misinformation out there.
I think the key word there that everyone has said is tool.
Yes.
So this is a tool that we need to use and not be used by it. There's a quote unquote dark side or wrong side to everything. Money in the wrong hands is a tool that is used for ill-gotten gain or ill-gotten purposes. But if you think of it like electricity, everyone has access to electricity. Now my home bill is much less than to power Little Caesars Arena, right? But it's still a tool. They just use it as a higher level, right? To power what they have going on. I need to use it to power what I have going on, which is less than what they're using it at, but I'm using it to power what I need. So that's how we should use this technology, is to supercharge what we have going on in our homes and our businesses and our lives, and then help it to accelerate where we are.
Yeah.
So just use it as a tool.
We had a lawyer on recently who said ChatGPT is not going to replace lawyers, but lawyers who use AI are going to replace the lawyers
That's my
who
favorite
don't.
quote. Yeah.
It's a good one. Yeah. All right, finally, we asked ChatGPT to give us an itinerary for someone visiting Detroit for the first time. It told us to visit the Motown Museum, explore the DIA, the Detroit Institute of Arts, check out the architecture, go to Belle Isle, and try some of Detroit's famous food. Now, in fairness, that was an easy question, but it's pretty spot on. Are those not what people would recommend?
Yeah, I mean, and plus that information is coming back to you. But let's also add, so ChatGPT, so GPT-4 just launched March 14th, right? And so think about the way we're going to be able to ask that or prompt that same question, because it's multinodal. Not trying to get super nerdy, but now we'll have audio, we'll have video, and we'll have images that we'll be able to feed into it, and it will communicate something back. I'll give you an example. You'll be able to take a picture of a closet and say, generate a packing list.
Wow.
You'll be able to write a note on a napkin and say, create a website, and it'll be able to decode that information and turn it into a website. So the next version, or the version that we're in now, what it's getting ready to do is getting ready to change life as we know it. Life as we know it.
That's no small statement.
No.
And you don't mean to be hyperbolic. It really does seem like it's already upending everything. And it's 4 months old. This new one's 2 days old.
Yeah, and they're already working on GPT-5.
Yes.
If you can picture the difference between 3 and 4, picture a golf ball next to a yoga ball.
Wow.
And I'm not kidding, because 3 has 100 million parameters. Or 175 million.
And 3 was already mind-blowing.
This one went from 175 billion to 100 trillion parameters in one shot.
Do
so
we
the
have
amount
a
of
ball
accuracy
to
is better.
visualize what 5 might be? Like
Probably the sun.
Okay, a whole planet. All right. Wow, fascinating. We will be right back with our final thoughts.
CBS News Detroit, on your block, around the clock in Macomb County. Hi, we're CBS News Detroit. But we don't just cover the news here. We're also here, and everywhere in between. You know, the places you live, work, and play in Southeast Michigan. We're talking less of this, and more of the stories that actually matter to you.
CBS News Detroit, on your block, around the clock.
That's right, local news just found a home in your neighborhood. We're CBS News Detroit, live, streaming, and on demand. Nice to meet you. CBS News Detroit, on your block, around the clock in Wayne County. CBS News Detroit, on your block, around the clock in Monroe County.
CBS News Detroit, the stories you care about.
Live, streaming, and on demand. We're on your block, around the clock.
Southeast Michigan news whenever you want it.
We live here. We work here.
From North Branch to Southgate.
East Point to Westland.
Wherever you live, we're here for you.
Making a difference in your neighborhood.
CBS News Detroit, live, streaming, and on demand. Building a better newscast, one story at a time.
CBS News Detroit, on your block, around the clock in Oakland County. It's here, the new CBS News Detroit.
Covering every corner of our community.
With experienced journalists, uncovering the stories that truly matter to you.
Making a difference in your neighborhood.
And weather experts, always looking ahead to prepare you for what's next. Live, streaming, and on demand, with more hours of local news coming soon.
Southeast Michigan news whenever you want it, right here on CBS News Detroit.
Weekdays at 5, 6, and 11, and streaming live.
If you want to solve things like autonomous car, if you want to create more complex decision making, like how do I manage risks of bank in an automatic way? How can I replace lawyers with a machine? Or how can I replace journalists or venture capitalists with a machine? You need AI. And the emergence of this new generation of AI is opening up huge amounts of opportunities.
Now, when you start talking about replacing journalists, I get a little nervous. I'll say that. But already we've discussed some of the limitations and how it's unlikely people are going to be entirely replaced. This is also going to create a lot of new jobs, and it's going to be a tool for so many people, correct, journalists included. But I want to talk about some of the limitations. So these systems are scanning the internet, basically, GPT-4 up until September of 2021. What are some of the potential drawbacks of scanning what is already out there on the already, I don't know if flawed is the word for the internet, but there's a lot on the internet that's not great, right?
Mm-hmm. A lot of what they fed it, though, wasn't just the internet. They gave it books.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
GPT
tell me about
in particular
that. They
was given
trained
thousands of books first, so it was credible sources to start with. But
sure.
I mean, the biggest problem to me is bias. Mm-hmm. Who does most programming? Old white men, always has been. So you see a lot of bias against women and minorities all the time in HR systems, in all kinds of these things. So that stuff's still got to go. We got to figure that out.
Yeah. Cynthia, what concerns you when you hear that conversation?
Well, I think it's the accuracy. So this is not a one-stop shop and copy-paste into something that you're going to publish. It still needs to be fact-checked, right? It's not an excuse for laziness, but I also would encourage people not to lean into fear and not use it. So use it and vet it, and then lean into the opportunity that it has to supercharge and accelerate your business, your life, etc. I feel like there's a journey that people go on, that there's this, it's open access, right? So now you have this awareness, and some people's adoption phase is short, but then some are long. So we want to shorten that adoption phase so they can get to the acceleration and really enjoy what it's meant to do.
Yeah, and you mentioned during the commercial break, it is possible some jobs will be eliminated by this technology, but there's a brighter side to that.
Yes. So there was a world report that 85 million jobs will be eliminated by AI by 2025. But the good news and the flip side, leaning into the opportunity, there'll be 95 million jobs created, right? So just like we don't need the milkman anymore, we don't deliver mail on horses, right? We have cars and things like that. This is just a new generation of opportunities. And we talked about the prompt engineer role that can amass a $350K salary because this is a new position. So new opportunity, lean into the opportunity and away from fear.
Yeah. And Had, you are working to introduce people to that opportunity. Even last time you were here, you mentioned your own daughter. You're teaching her how to think with the use of this tool.
Yes, and so I think the power is, if you look at the letters GPT, the most important letter is pre-trained. And so the opportunity for people and small businesses is that you have the opportunity to train the model. And so you can upload content in there and then ask it to write content based upon your writing style or information that you put into the system. I think Dave hit a very, very good point earlier talking about the biases. And I think what's really important is that we want to make sure that this tool or these tools moving forward, that they are not only accessible to all people, but people at various economic levels, people of color, people that look like us, are getting access to these tools.
Yeah.
We want to make sure that these tools are used and leveraged because millionaires are going to be created, built upon this platform.
Absolutely.
But is everybody going to have access? This is the first time from a commercial standpoint that regular everyday citizens, imagine the student in the city of Detroit who's applying to Harvard University, and he doesn't have or she doesn't have the coach that somebody in Oakland County does, but they can go create the content that they're going to need for their application, and they can put it through ChatGPT so that they're not at a disadvantage.
Yeah, it could level the playing field.
It can level the playing field.
It's also a call to create. So this is a pre-trained model and it's using data up to 2021. So now it's time to create things to put it in the data now, because as this tool gets iterated, it's going to take some more data.
Yeah.
So will our voice be in that data set, right? I think what we as a team look to do is teach a new code, and we have an acronym for that. So teach people or inspire people to be creative, to optimize their life and their business, to dream again, and then be educated. So that's a new type of code teaching that we're doing.
The new age of code.
That's right.
All right, and we only have a few moments left, but if people want to learn how to prompt, how to access this, and how to use it to their advantage, where do they find you guys? How do they get involved?
That is an amazing question.
Right on time.
So they can go to promptcamp.ai. It'll show the events that we've already done. We have one upcoming. We have a big conference coming up in the fourth quarter of 2023.
Okay.
But we're super excited. So on April 12th through the 13th, we have our next virtual version of that, and we're going to walk through a lot of these tools. We're going to talk about GPT-4 and in very specific use cases. So.
All right. All right, we hope to have you all back again. This is not a conversation that's going to end anytime soon, and if they come up with GPT-5 tomorrow, we're going to need you right back here. We're going to need you. All right. Thank you so much to Hod, Cynthia, and Dave for joining us, and thank you for watching CBS News Detroit at 7.